These are exercises conducted by American paratroopers from the 173rd Airborne Brigade in northern Italy. Since the end of World War II, soldiers from across the ocean have been protecting Europe from the Soviet and now Russian threat from the air, land, and sea. Will the U.S. withdraw these forces? U.S. President Donald Trump dispelled these doubts during a meeting with the Finnish leader.
We have a lot of troops in Europe, as you know, a lot. And we can move them around a little bit, but no, basically we'll be pretty much set. Go ahead, what's his second?
In this matter, Trump was backed up by U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth.
We're very much heartened by your leadership to get NATO to rise up to 5%, which means they can take primary responsibility for defense of the continent. But that doesn't mean America is abandoning NATO in Europe. But we could look at where our troops are postured, what makes the most sense for America and our NATO allies.
The American leader has once again assured that the U.S. will defend NATO's eastern flank countries if necessary.
I would, yes, I would. They're a member of NATO. I would. They're great people, but I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think he's going to do that.
Currently, there are about 100,000 American troops stationed in Europe. Most of them are permanently deployed in Germany, Italy, Great Britain, Spain, and Turkey. Since the outbreak of full-scale war in Ukraine, nearly 10,000 American military personnel have been stationed in Poland on a rotational basis. These are photos from joint Polish-American Special Forces exercises near Warsaw. What's more, at the beginning of September, during a meeting between Presidents Donald Trump and Karol Nawrocki at the White House, a declaration was made that is important for Poland's security.
Czy amerykańscy żołnierze pozostaną w Polsce?
I think so. I mean, do you know something I don't? I don't know.
These words were spoken at a time when the Americans are reviewing their armed forces around the world. The contingent of forces in Asia will most likely be strengthened, as these troops are intended to deter Chinese imperial ambitions. There are already nearly 76,000 American soldiers in Japan and South Korea, but experts reassure us that Europe should not fear these changes. The Americans cannot ignore Central and Eastern Europe or treat it with nonchalance because it is a very important region of the world. The Russian Federation is in alliance with China, but minor changes are almost certain. Russia's brutal attack on Ukraine and increasingly frequent provocations against NATO's eastern flank countries have proven that American troops are needed closer to the eastern border of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. If the reduction affects any country, it may affect those with large garrisons, such as Germany. If there is a transfer, then what seems obvious is a transfer from Germany. The question is where. We would certainly like it to be Poland, but any country on the eastern flank would be beneficial for us. The report on the review of U.S. forces may be published at the turn of the year, but already, U.S. President Donald Trump is strengthening NATO's eastern flank, sending weapons to Ukraine, and planning to supply Kiev with super-effective Tomahawk missiles. The presidents of 11 European countries sat down at the same table to discuss the most important issues currently facing our continent. They talked about security, including on the eastern flank, the peace plan being implemented in the Middle East, and how to move with the times.
Our discussions are focused on the new technologies, artificial intelligence. We feel the breakthrough of artificial intelligence and around the artificial intelligence and new technologies all over the world. This is a very important issue and subject for my tenure as the president of Poland.
The Arajoloś summit is also an opportunity for bilateral meetings. The president of Poland, Karol Nawrocki, met with the presidents of Austria, Slovakia, Bulgaria, Portugal, and Germany, among others. And yesterday he met with the president of Estonia, a country that, like Poland, is struggling with hybrid attacks from Russia. It was clear during the Arajoloś meeting that countries such as Poland, Latvia, and Estonia have a similar view of these challenges, and that in some respects, it was also necessary to try to convince our allies, especially our Western allies, although it is clear that today's approach to the Russian Federation is much healthier than it was a few years ago. Will the European Union's approach to the Migration Pact also change? Polish President Karol Nawrocki has sent a letter on this matter to European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Dear Madam President, the European Commission is facing important decisions in the near future, so I would like to kindly inform you that Poland will not agree to any actions by European institutions that would aim to deploy illegal migrants in Poland, and I hope that you will take this fact into account in your actions.
Polska nie godzi się na to, aby
Poland does not agree to this, and certainly President Karol Nawrocki does not agree for those problems that we are seeing in Western Europe to also affect Polish people. Therefore, the president sent a letter on the eve of the decisions to be made by the European Commission to make sure that the president and the entire European Commission are aware that Poland will definitely not respect any acts or decisions of the European Commission in this regard.
decyzji Komisji Europejskiej.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban responded to the letter. Europe is shifting. President Karol Nawrocki refuses to implement the Migration Pact in Poland. We refuse as well. Now there are two of us. If a third joins, that's already a rebellion. Pressure against the migration policy can also be exerted at tomorrow's demonstration in Warsaw. We want to show that we oppose the violation of the law and the destruction of Poland. I appeal especially to the younger generation. Young people may not remember what it was like 10 years ago, and those were terrible times. The Migration Pact, demanding the relocation of illegal immigrants from Germany, France, Belgium, and the Netherlands to Polish territory. We do not consent to this. The protest is also supposed to concern, among other things, the European Union-Mercosur agreement, which will have an impact on Polish agriculture. The demonstration will start tomorrow at 2 p.m. at Warsaw's Castle Square. The Israeli army is withdrawing from the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, a stream of people stretched to the horizon. Tens of thousands of Palestinians are returning to Gaza. The city is in ruins. But today, instead of silence interrupted by explosions and gunfire, the noise of the streets can be heard. There is hope for a rebirth from the ruins. Praise God, I am very happy to be back on my land and in my home. Even though it has been bombed and destroyed, I am returning to my land to settle among neighbors I know and love. Humanitarian aid is already on its way. International support for the reconstruction of the ruined country is also planned. However, the most important thing is to fulfill the provisions of the first point of the ceasefire. Israel has already begun to implement its commitments. At noon today, a ceasefire came into effect after 2 years of fighting in the Gaza Strip. After deploying our forces along the agreed lines, a 72-hour period began, during which the hostages are to be released. Last night, the government approved an agreement on the return of our 48 hostages. This was a key element after the signing of the agreement, negotiated in Egypt by Israeli envoys. The government in Tel Aviv had to ratify the agreement. American pressure worked. The agreement was approved by both sides.
The first thing we're doing is getting our hostages back, okay? And that's what people wanted more than anything else. They wanted these hostages back that have lived in hell like nobody has ever even dreamt possible. And after that, we'll see. But they've agreed to things, and I think it's going to move along pretty well.
However, analysts warn against optimism. The hostages were Hamas's bargaining chip in this war. Despite this, Israel struck the Gaza Strip with tremendous force. When the hostages return to Israel, Hamas will have no guarantees other than the terms of the ceasefire under American auspices, and Washington will be responsible for enforcing the terms of the agreement. We have defeated Hamas. We have fought it at every turn. In the next stages of the peace plan, Hamas will be disarmed and Gaza demilitarized. If this can be achieved easily, so much the better. If not, we will achieve our goal by taking tough action. According to U.S. President Donald Trump's peace plan, Israel is to release hundreds of arrested Palestinians, including 250 sentenced to life imprisonment, but also all women and children. At the same time, both sides commit to immediately allowing full humanitarian aid into Gaza. Its reconstruction is to take place without the participation of Hamas under an extraordinary transitional government based on an apolitical Palestinian International Committee, supervised by a peace council chaired by the U.S. President.